Hello, everybody. Welcome to this installment of Dale Carnegie's Ask the Expert Call. My guest today is Bob Ranieri, a celebrated Dale Carnegie trainer for more than 35 years. Bob's background is always also related to his business activities. He's got a degree in engineering as we started out in the world, and also owned and operated construction and commercial real estate companies. So Bob's experience is not just from the teaching side. He's actually done the things that he teaches about, which gives him more credibility. He's also went back and got his master's degree and became a licensed family counselor. Bob's been a wonderful Dale Carnegie trainer for so many years, and he's been all over the map with it. You know, sales, communications, leadership, and also presentations, which is today's topic. And one of my favorite things to say about the presentation I heard from one of our other Dale Carnegie trainers is that every conversation is a presentation. So it's that important to us, whether you're talking in small groups or large groups. And I think we'll cover that. We have some questions from our audience. And Bob Ranieri, welcome to the Ask the Expert Call.
Thank you, Michael. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great. I'm looking forward to too. I know one of the things that people talk about a lot is, you know, we always hear about the idea that public speaking is more feared than death, even, right? The old joke about that. So one of the questions we got is basically along those lines: I hate to do public speaking. I'm afraid of it. You know, why is it so important? Why is it important for us to be good at presenting our ideas?
Well, the general reason is that you want to make sure people understand what you're thinking. And an example I can give you goes back to Lee Iacocca, who was an engineer with the Ford Motor Company. And he was a very good engineer. And he started to notice that the people around him who were not as good as him were getting promoted, and he wasn't. And he was trying to figure out what was going on. So he realized that the people that were getting promoted had high visibility. And that high visibility took place because they were getting involved in making presentations to clients, to different organizations. So he realized that that was necessary for him to advance. So he decided to get involved in the Dale Carnegie program, believe it or not, started to become more comfortable speaking to people. And as they say, the rest is history. Went on to design the Ford Mustang, and then went on to save Chrysler later on.
That's right. Wow, that's a great credibility story for us. I mean, that's a great success story, and it just goes to show you that, you know, we present our ideas, but then we get perceived differently, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and another reason for that too is we have a list of 10 reasons to become an effective listener, and number 10 on our list is that effective presenters get promoted much more quickly than anyone else. Because again, that higher visibility, people are seeing what you think about, and you're on their radar, and that's the important thing, especially in large organizations. You can kind of get lost in the middle somewhere, but if you're showing up at meetings and giving presentations, people are going to notice you.
Right, that's great. So another question we have from our audience is that, you know, I'm not a salesperson. You know, why isn't, you know, how does that help me to become a good presenter? And it's kind of tags along to what we just talked about, but is, you know, anything else that you can add to that?
Yeah, we hear that quite often about people. Well, I'm not in sales. Why do I have to speak and tell people what I want? And my response to that is we're all in sales because we're selling our spouse on what restaurant to go to or what movie to go see. We're selling our kids on what kind of vacation we're going to be taking. We're selling our bosses at work on our thoughts and our ideas. So we're always on the opportunity to sell our ideas. So it's very important that we can communicate that very effectively and get our point across very concisely and powerfully.
That's so true. You know, I think it's about leadership too. It's like, again, tied into the first answer you gave, is that people are perceived differently if they're better at presenting, and we are selling our ideas all the time, right? If we want to move up in our career and our organization, you know, you need to get people we need to win people to our way of thinking, right?
Yeah,
especially when it's good for them too. Another popular question that we get is the next one is that, you know, I think I'm a good presenter, but the problem is I don't get the results that I'm hoping for when I do speak. In other words, I'm not being persuasive, or I'm not getting, you know, the impact that I would expect. Is there something that we can do about that? Or is it just some people are good and other people are not?
No, and actually we address that with two things to keep in mind. One is, what is the purpose of your presentation? And really, if you look at the reason why you present, there are three main reasons. One is to inform people, just give them some information, an informational meeting. That takes place in a lot of sales calls, just being informational with it. The next one is you want to convince or persuade people to either take some action or do something that you want them to do. And then the last one, and we get some feedback on this, it should be some sort of entertainment. And not that you have to be a comedian in front of a group, nor do song and dance, but you have to be able to have some excitement to it, some animation to it. So there's some aspect of entertainment there. And it's so important to have that purpose, to know why you are giving a presentation. And that's the important part. I think when people get bogged down and lost, they're not quite sure why they're doing it. And you have to and that's one of the questions you have to ask yourself. What is the purpose of my presentation?
Right. That's a powerful thought, because some people just wing it, right? Or they just say, well, here's some information, but what is the outcome that you want, right? It's very much based on a lot of the things that we teach, right? It's like, what result do we want to have happen as, by this? And I guess knowing your audience, it would be another thing. I remember when you taught us on presentations, that was one of the first things you said, was like, know your audience too.
Yeah.
Okay. Other people of concern with, like, I don't need to be Tony Robbins. I don't need to be on stage talking to 5,000 people at Madison Square Garden, but I do need to be effective in small groups within my company, not only externally, but internally. How important is that, and how can we help with that?
It's very important. And that goes back to the second rule I was saying about presentations, and you mentioned it before, know your audience. You have to know who's in your audience. So knowing your audience and knowing the purpose is very important. And I'll give you an example of knowing who the audience is. I was asked to give a presentation by the president of a CPA company to a group of his members. And I asked him basically what he was looking to achieve, what was the purpose of doing it, and who was going to be in the audience. And he said, oh, just a couple of people, don't worry about it. And I was unhappy with that response, because I needed to know really how to tailor my presentation, what their needs were. So I spoke to one of the managers there, and he was able to give me much more feedback in terms of what they were looking for. And basically it came down to how could they present a professional image when they went out soliciting clients or going to networking events. How can they come across more professional? And with that information, I was able to tailor my presentation to meet their needs. So it's always good to know who is your audience and what's the purpose of the presentation, because then you can really go to the heart of what their needs are and give them a fulfilling experience.
Well, that's interesting. And what's really, I find insightful about that is that you dug a little deeper. You didn't just accept his answer, but you did some research, and so that's important for our audience. I think a good tip, if you're taking notes out there, to dig a little deeper, do your research, and you'll find out what the hot buttons are of the audience, and be able to be more effective. I think that's.
And I'll even add on to that, Michael. In today's day and age, with the internet so pervasive, you can Google a company if you're doing a presentation to an organization, find out what's going on. I've done that before too. I'll look at some of their recent press releases, see what's going on, what's important in the organization, and being able to tie some of that back in to what their needs are. It's just a way of showing the group that you're presenting to that you really know their operation.
Right. That's a great tip too, And that's, I know it's probably your favorite principle, number 17, right? That speaks to that. It's
try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Yes.
Very, very powerful. Okay. Another thing that people struggle with is looking at their notes and being tied to the podium. I don't have a good memory. That was a question that somebody submitted. How can I get better at speaking when I don't have a good memory and I need to rely on my notes?
The tendency is for a lot of people to rely very heavily on their notes and then get to the point where they start reading their notes. And we kind of discourage that only because we read so much differently than we speak. And you can also often see it with people on TV. You can tell that they're reading from a teleprompter. They're not really talking naturally. So my suggestion would be to create some bullet points that could be basically the core of the idea that you want to come across. And I had this experience personally firsthand when I was in 9th grade. We had a book report to give on any book of our choice. I read The Great Escape. They made a movie out of it later on with Steve McQueen. And we had to give a 5-minute presentation. And I was nervous as heck. So what I ended up doing was writing it all out longhand and trying to memorize it. Well, what happened the day of my presentation, I got about 3 sentences in, forgot what came next, and I was done. I kind of stammered my way through the remaining 7 minutes of my presentation because I forgot where I was. And that tends to happen when you start to memorize or you start to read things. So the way to address this is to have some bullet points in there and say, okay, fine. When I come to this point, I'm going to talk about how we can help our clients. When I come to this point, I'm going to talk about or give a story about how we can make people more effective. And that's another tool to keep in mind too. Add lots of stories to your presentation. The advantages are, number one, you don't have to worry about memorizing it because it's a part of who you are. You know it right away. And number two, we tend to get very excited when we go back and relive some of our own experiences. So it helps to make it more animated in front of a group.
That's right. And that, yeah, that's a key point too, because stories are so powerful, right? We all, as humans, you know, we love stories, right? Movies, books, you know, it's all about stories. So a great way to be effective presenter is to tell stories. So that's a great tip, everybody out there listening. Sort of tied into the notes idea is, I know you have a strong opinion on PowerPoint. So the question somebody sent in is, well, you know, should I use PowerPoint or should I not? What's your take on that?
I think we all have been in a presentation where basically I call it death by PowerPoint. Basically what the person does is just ends up giving a presentation, and it's one thing after another. It's just slide, 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 slide. And really there's no interaction with the audience at all. When I've been in situations like that, my feelings are, why am I wasting my time being here? Let me print out the slides, I'll take it home and I'll read it at my leisure.
Right.
So really you have to be more engaged. And the other disadvantage with the PowerPoint presentation like that, we have a tendency to turn our back to the audience. We want to make sure we always maintain contact. So we want to be looking at our audience rather than turning around to read the PowerPoint slide behind us. And then the other thing too is we have to always keep in mind that the PowerPoint is not our presentation. PowerPoint is meant to enhance our presentation, but we as the presenter, the speaker, is the presentation. So we want to keep the focus on us, not on our PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, that's interesting. You know, definitely seen those death by PowerPoint presentations where they fill up the slide with so much information and then they stand there and read the slide. Right. And I think a key point that you brought up there was to have a little bit more interaction with your audience too, right? I mean, if you're just relying on the slide, you're just, you know, showing up and throwing up. Whereas if you're having more of a conversation with the audience and getting them to weigh in, is that something you recommend where you're actually having more interaction?
Yes, always be involved with your audience. And to tie back with our previous question about notes, you can use bullets on your PowerPoint slide also. You know what you're going to talk about. All you got to do is put something up there to remind you, and then you can go right into a conversation on what it is. And then interact with the audience is very, very important.
Interesting, yeah. So in Dale Carnegie, we have the high impact presentation program, which obviously goes into a lot of this in detail, some of the things we talked about, but also the Dale Carnegie course itself. We're making micro presentations all the time, which helps people depending on what their need is, right? But I think we agree, and I think you've given us the solid you know, support that our presentations are really important in how we how people perceive us and how we can be more effective at communicating. So I also want to mention, Bob, as we wrap up here, let the audience know that you are available for coaching. Not only in the presentation area, but you've done a lot of C-level coaching. I know we've worked together on some accounts with a major, you know, president of a very large organization here on Long Island. And others, you know, I know you've coached people on their leadership and management and also presentations. So I'd like to encourage the audience to reach out to us. The purpose of these podcasts is to let you know that we're here to help and that there's opportunities for us to work together and to help you with some of these tips so that your organization and your people can, you know, have a higher level of performance. So you can reach out to us at longislandinfo@dalecarnegie.com. And we'll put the conversation, the connection information in the show notes too. But Bob, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us.
Michael, let me just close with one more story that refers back to a program I did, one of our high impact presentation programs. There was a woman in there, her name was Nancy. She was a registered nurse, and she had just recently started her own business. And what she was doing is going around the country speaking about wound care at nursing homes and in hospitals. You know, if you don't turn your patient every so often, they start to get some wounds there that can become infected. So she was wanting to do this for a long time. She was tremendously afraid of public speaking, and that's why she enrolled in our 2-day program. So when she came in on Thursday morning, she was very nervous and very anxious about the whole process. And by the time we finished on Friday afternoon, I saw tremendous growth in her. So I spoke to her at the end of the class and I asked her when is going to be her next presentation. And she said she was going to give a presentation up in Albany on Thursday. I said, would it be okay if I follow up with you on Friday to see how it went? And she said it would be fine. So I called her Friday morning and you could hear the smile in her voice over the phone. That's how powerful it was. So I asked her, I said, Nancy, how did things go? She said, Bob, I have to tell you, number one, I wasn't nervous at all. Number two, I really enjoyed giving the presentation. And number three, when I finished, I got a standing ovation.
Wow.
So it just shows what happens when you use the proper tools and have a little bit of confidence in yourself, the effect you can have on other people as you become a presenter and changing ideas with them. So we encourage you to ask for Dale Carnegie's information on how we can become better and helping you become better at your goals too.
Beautiful, beautiful. Great story to close it out, Bob. And it really does underscore the great benefits you get from coaching from a true professional like you. So, Bob, thank you for joining us on Dale Carnegie's Ask the Expert call. And everybody listening, we appreciate your support and hope that you reach out to us and see if you want to book a free session with Bob Ranieri, talk about leadership, presentations, communications, management, teamwork, engagement. Those are all areas that Bob works in. So again, we're at Long Island Info at dalecarnegie.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you the next time on Dale Carnegie's Ask the Expert call.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.
Thank you, Bob.